Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and as always, welcome back to another History of video. With us having covered the Lin Kuei, I thought that it was about time we turned our gaze to that of the Edenians. Starting off with arguably my favourite amongst them, the bastard child of Argus, and former demigod enforcer of Shao Kahn, Rain. Now, Rain himself is a particularly interesting case study in the MK mythos, as a lot has changed and been altered with him from timeline to timeline, in some cases adding to what he brings to the narrative, or currently, in the present, what is taken away. Rain himself has always been a peculiar case in the series, as despite his own popularity, he's not actually been featured in that many mainline games, with 3 mainline appearances and 2 DLC appearances. So his inclusions have been few and far between, with each and every different version of him being slightly different and slightly tweaked in very minor ways. So that is what we will be exploring today. But before we do begin, as always, if you like what we do here and wish to see more, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It's a small and minor thing, but trust me when I say it goes a really long way with supporting the channel in the algorithm. And hey, if you like what we do here and wish to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and tick that bell. But anywho, let's jump right into things. Now, to truly understand Rain as well as his character, let's first touch on his creation, as it's arguably one of the most interesting aspects of Rain's character, one that's led to such huge popularity in the fandom. Rain himself would be introduced in Mortal Kombat 3, one of the many different color palette swapped ninjas within the series. So on paper, I would say he wasn't entirely too unique. However, it's the concept behind his design which is quite genius. As again, whilst he's simply just the purple ninja, the purpose of him being called Rain is of course a homage and reference to that of the artist Prince. Initially, this was all originally intended to be a gag, of course, yet due to his status as a ninja, he was more or less instantly cemented as a fan favourite, having a very slow but notable rise in popularity. And this would all be finally capitalized on in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. So this now takes us onto the origin of Rain himself. And the Master of Storms has a lot of reason to be as cocky as he is, as Rain, better known as Zephyro in the current canon, is the bastardized offspring between the Edenian Amara and the Edenian demigod Argus. Due to the nature of his spawn, an affair outside of wedlock, Rain, as well as his family, would be shunned by the gods, with Argus and his kin casting him out, seeing him as nothing more than a mistake. Growing up, Rain was completely oblivious to his ancestry, and there was a very good reason for that. Whilst not officially confirmed in the mainline canon, as it's strictly reserved to an arcade ladder ending, we do learn that following his birth, his body would be switched out by his own father, traded off and given to an Edenian general, as the god understandably attempted to hide his shame. So growing up, Rain was under the impression that he had been abandoned by his mother. But the tragic truth of the case was, she was long dead. Following the switch, the child Rain had been replaced by was stillborn. So Amara, thinking she had lost her only child, would actually be left to die alone of heartache and grief, abandoned by the man she once loved. In the fall of these events, Rain would very fortunately fall into the care of an unnamed Edenian general, one who raised the boy, fed him, and put a roof over his head. Very little was known or really explored of this relationship, but it's firmly believed that Rain loved his foster father, which makes it all that more tragic for what would come next. Echoes of the past would continue to ripple for Rain, as the world of Edenia would fall to the likes of Outworld, having lost 10 consecutive tournaments in Mortal Kombat. To save his son, the general would smuggle him away, keeping him safe and free of the bloodshed. But his strong sense of duty is what would send him back to the battlefield, to fight along his fellow Edenians, and sadly perish with them. Rain would be abandoned once more, forced to fight and survive with the skills his father had taught him. Yet it was only a matter of time until he was found by Shao's extermination squads. With little to no choice of survival, Rain would be forced to surrender and offer his life in eternal service to the Khan. A so gracious offer that the tyrants would gladly accept. Absorbed into his ranks as one of their own, Rain would be forced to commit many atrocities in his name, assisting in spreading his conquest across the realms. Now, seeing as we are touching on conquest, this would actually have him tie into the conquest mode of Mortal Kombat Deception, where he would actually be in pursuit of obtaining a pair of very sacred Shokan daggers. And this would have him cross paths with Shigenko, someone who he would obtain it from. But it is revealed later down the line that he would actually keep them for himself. Now, Rain is largely absent for the events of Mortal Kombat 1 to 2, but it's in Mortal Kombat 3 where his presence is finally felt. Because in the fall of MK2, where Shao would be defeated by Liu Kang, the champion and representative of Earthrealm, the Khan would wage a full-scale invasion against it, with Rain acting as one of his generals during that siege. He would lay waste, decay, and death in the Emperor's name. That is, until he crossed path with his fellow Edenian, Kitana. It is from the princess's lips where he would learn the horrible truth of his adopted father, that it was Shao himself who had slain him. Infuriated by this information, and feeling like nothing more than that of a puppet, Rain would turn on his master during the invasion, determined to lead a one-man siege against him in this apocalypse. But it is unknown how successful, nor how canon this all is, as it's never touched upon moving forward. But the disintegration of Shao's ranks is what does ultimately lead to his loss in the third game. So Rain's defection alone would have most certainly played a part in his downfall. Following this, Rain is absent for a very long time, missing out on Shinnok's invasion, the formation of the Deadly Alliance, as well as the return of the Dragon King. It is only up until Armageddon where he does return, and does so in a pretty big manner, as the way he comes in is ultimately the characterization everyone kind of becomes accustomed to. So at some point prior to the events of Armageddon, Rain would encounter the likes of the Necromancer Quan Chi. It's through him where he would learn the truth of his origin, as well as the godhood that flowed through his veins. Feeling a strong sense of bravado, Rain would be absorbed by his newfound pride in divinity. Yet, he was undeniably disgusted by the nature of his abandonment, bitter at Argus's actions, as well as his favoured sons, Taven and Dagon. Rain would seek retribution against the Patriarch, wishing to kill his two favoured sons, knowing just how valuable they were to the prophecy of Armageddon. So, as expected, he would finally cross paths with his kin, Taven. It's here where he would proclaim himself as Prince of Edenia, and how he was equally entitled to his parents' gifts, even if he had to kill his brothers to do so. Thus, the siblings would trade blows, with Rain ultimately losing, only just narrowly slipping away through a portal. In the aftermath of these events, his arrogance had blinded him, his grudge had consumed him, and he was lost in his own fury. As the Battle of Armageddon approached, Rain would once again align with the forces of darkness, looking to eclipse his brothers by absorbing blaze. Unfortunately, very few would survive this onslaught, with Rain and his brothers dying in the final battle. So, up to a certain extent, Rain did get his wish. It's just a wish he would never quite live to see. So this now takes us onto Mortal Kombat 9, which effectively serves as both a pseudo-sequel as well as that of a reboot. And Rain himself doesn't actually appear in the game's main story. Not at all, actually. However, he is DLC, and in the vignette that establishes and reveals the character, we do find out some of the new different tweaks to that of his origin here. whilst the lot is the same, child of Argus and Mara, his handing over to the general would take place at a much later point in time, one following Edenia's fall. So here, he would be raised amongst freedom fighters, battling against Shao's cruel regime in the hopes of freeing Edenia from his grasp. Now, blending elements from his Armageddon iteration, this version of Rain, while still oblivious to his heritage, is unmatched in talent and skill, making him a very valuable asset to any militia he is part of. So much so that he actually demanded command at an extremely young age. Something which, understandably, did rub higher command the wrong way. So rejected from his offer and seeking more power, Rain would betray his comrades to Shao, joining his side to obtain what he believed he deserved: dominance. Now, Rain's first real integration to the reboot's canon would come in the form of Mortal Kombat X. Just a quick heads up to point out the elephant in the room here. Originally, the X line of comics, designed to bridge the events from 9 to X, did have Rain feature in it as a very important character. However, since then, such comic has actually been retconned. So for the purpose of streamlining his history, let's stick with what we know is confirmed canon. Because following the fallout of Mortal Kombat 9, where Shao is defeated and the vacuum of power is opened up, it would be his homunculus daughter, Mileena, who overtook his role as Kahn, leading with a cruel and very bloody Iron Fist. Due to this, her reign would be very brief, later being overthrown by the Oztec Kotal. After escaping his capture, she would then recruit the likes of Rain and Tanya, hoping that with these new generals, she could overthrow him, even promising them the freedom of Edenia should they do so. Now off screen, in between the events of 9 to X, Rain would actually find out about his divine heritage, and as expected, bask in his new bestowed glory. Something we would see during the events of Mortal Kombat X, as he can be seen playing a part in Mileena's ambush against Kotal. This would lead to a confrontation between the two, where the Khan is nearly drowned. Once again though, Rain's arrogance continues to get the best of him, as he is unable to finish the job and defeated, then nearly killed by Erron Black, only just narrowly being saved by the former Khanen. Rain would appear once again much later on, once they retreated from Outworld's eyes. With Shinnok's amulet in their care, they knew that it was only a matter of time before Kotal and his forces tracked them down. What they hadn't accounted for though, was their temporary alliance with the Special Forces. So once their camp is infiltrated by Cassie and D'Vorah, Rain as well as Tanya are defeated by the duo, with Rain himself just narrowly surviving, as Cassie is able to convince the Chitin to spare them. Canonically, in terms of story, this is actually the last time we see Rain in the reboot. As whilst yes, he does return in Mortal Kombat 11, it is strictly as DLC. And unlike the first Combat Pack, which did have a lot of narrative significance, the second Combat Pack, not so much. So this marks the one and only real time he appears during this timeline. Now bringing us to the current and new era of Mortal Kombat, one forged in Liu Kang's vision. So once again, Rain would undergo quite a change here, and this time quite a significant one, as unlike previous reigns, this one would actually be stripped of his godhood and divinity. Because according to Liu's own wishes and dialogue in-game, we learn that Liu Kang had hoped to spare him the burden of divinity, as it has typically been what shackled Sephiroth in the past. By altering the timeline and taking Argus out the picture, he had hoped for a better future for Rain. And up to a certain extent, he was correct. By not being an orphaned child of war, this is the first timeline and version of the character to be raised by Amara, as having never come into contact with Argus meant that the two had a very happy life together. With the Outworld Edenian War having never happened, Rain is given a relatively normal upbringing. I mean, as normal as you can get in Outworld. And here, even stripped of his godhood, Rain still retains a very natural affinity for hydromancy, excelling in the Imperial Academy to the point where he is appointed High Mage, being placed amongst royalty, something that earns him the favour of Sindel. Although it isn't explored in-game, it is believed that the two had a very close relationship, with Sindel even seeing him as a son, supporting his needs and encouraging his gifts. Such nurturing, though, had caused him to fall back into his old ways, seeking power and acknowledgement. As behind the Empress's back, he had secretly aligned himself with General Shao and Shang Tsung, being promised glory and grandeur should he assist them in overthrowing the court. Despite knowing that this would be high treason, he gladly accepted their offer, working quietly behind the scenes, not looking to raise any suspicion, as he can even be seen nursing Princess Melina with her Tarkatan ailment. But shortly following the arrival of the Earthrealmers, as well as the Mortal Kombat tournament commencing, they would begin to sow turmoil on both sides, looking to cut Outworld off from the mortal plane, as by doing so, they could isolate and remove Sindel from power, something that would slowly take fruition as this alliance crumbled. Rain would then relocate to the Ying Fortress, assisting in preparation for Outworld's assault. It's also around this time where they would be infiltrated by the Lin Kuei. Whilst their leader, Bi-Han, had been recruited, his younger brother, Kuai Liang, was on the verge of escaping, something he saw from the corner of his eye. This would lead to a battle between the two, to which the mage would lose. Whilst the plan of the Dragon King's army was no longer a secret, all the pieces on the playing board were finally in motion, with their full-scale assault taking shape, with Shao and Rain confronting Sindel, revealing his true intent to the Empress. But they hadn't accounted on one thing, that their alliance with Earthrealm would be mended. So with Fire God Liu Kang by her side, Rain would be defeated by Sindel and then exiled, banished from the realm of Outworld. Now, in the aftermath following Titan Shang Tsung's defeat, the Hydromancer was completely lost. Having been abandoned by his former compatriots, he was now left to fend for himself. And out of desperation, he would forge an alliance with Havoc, assisting him in a really big way by causing the mass genocide of Sido, raising a massive flood that would kill thousands in his wake. So up to a certain extent, Rain had achieved his goal of greatness. But as he traversed the Barren Realm, the horrific realization of his actions finally settled in. The guilt he felt completely crumbled him, as this wasn't something he truly wanted. Thus, to atone for his crimes, he would willingly surrender to Empress Melina, hoping to find redemption by any means. So with that said, everyone, that has been it for the history of Rain. And from what you can tell, this character has had quite the evolution from timeline to timeline, being changed and altered in very minor ways, but ultimately ones that largely impact his role in the series from era to era, as his current present is the perfect example of this change. So now I all ask you the question of, what is your favourite version of Rain and why? Please do comment down below. But for now everyone, that has been it for me. Take care and I'll catch you soon.